Hello, everyone. My name is Tamara Kelly, and I am the director within the Lubin School's Office of Communications and External Relations. I'd like to welcome all of you to the second installment of Rewriting the Rules with Mark Stevens. Today's theme is thinking backwards and forwards simultaneously. So our guest, who is on the screen before you, Mark Stevens, he emphasizes that we're taught to learn in a straight line, but breaking through that tradition can lead to a personal competitive advantage and far greater personal joy slash fulfillment. So now to get things started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Mark Stevens to all of you. So Mark Stevens founded his first business at the ripe old age of 10. It was a Christmas tree store. And then eventually he moved on to a media company at the age of 20. His entrepreneurial forays turned to financial services and eventually one of the world's best known marketing firms, MSCO. He has written best selling books on business and marketing, and he's also lauded as an expert in business growth. After he sold MSCO, he was asked to coach others, and he actually views it as a privilege. So, since we will have time for Q&A after Mr. Stevens speaks, my colleague Sophia Periconi, she is the Assistant Director for Digital and Social Content here at Lubin. She will be moderating the Q&A portion of this session. Please feel free to place your questions in the chat box or use the raised hand gesture to indicate that you would like to ask a question. So, Mark, without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to you. Let's give Mark Stevens a round of applause, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Welcome.
Tamara and Sophia and everybody attending. So I'm going to ask you guys to do more than listen to me and ask questions today. I'm actually going to seek to give you an opportunity to participate in something that I think is rather interesting. But I'll get to that as I move along here. And in fact, Tamara and Sophia, if you can help me after, and those who want to participate, we can have record of them, and then they can be in touch with me.
Sure.
You'll see what this is as I proceed here. But learning backwards and forwards is at the same time as Tamara outlined. You're all in school now. I've always been in school. I don't think that I've ever been out of school, even though I'm not in a classroom and not tied to a particular university. But I think life is a learning lesson. And if you want to be successful, which I'm sure all of you do, or else you wouldn't be in school. And if you want to be fulfilled with the knowledge of how things work, what's going on here, what's expected of me, how can I achieve, how can I understand, how can I be exhilarated? That's all learning. Learning doesn't have to be about teachers and tests and classrooms and programming and all those things you're very familiar with. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but except the traditional way of teaching, traditional way of learning is linear. So we're taught, for example, if we study, let's take anything. If we're taught mathematics, we're taught to count from 1 to 10. That seems appropriate, right? That's the beginning. So you learn as a child. I have a grandson who just the other day showed us he can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. His father, my son, who's a math whiz, taught him to count from 1 to 10 that way. I don't think that's the place to start. Why not start with teaching a child what numbers mean? Why not take the numbers and put them in the context of, well, I tell you can watch television 1 hour a day. What does that mean? And put it in the context of hours and television and numbers and things like that, rather than rotely learning how to go from 1 to 20 and 20 to 40 and how to divide 4 by 2. This is just an example of that. Why not put it into a broader context? So what the hell do numbers mean? Why are we learning this? Why are they important? There's 10 fingers on my hands, but why is it 10 fingers? And you can relate to that. In the I've been working on something for the past year and a half that's with a team of data scientists, and it's just about ready for development. In fact, we'll be able to show it. We can show it very shortly. And but what it does, the thesis about it is what I want to explain and talk about with you folks today. And I certainly welcome your questions as at any point when I'm finished with my presentation. But this idea of learning in a linear way is very limiting. Like any book you pick up in school or in your own has a beginning and an end, but the end is artificial. Like when you study, let's say, the American Revolution, it ends after the creation of the nation. That didn't Nothing ended. An idea. It didn't start with the Revolutionary War. It started with great philosophers like John Locke. It turned into a revolution based on philosophical principles. We're taught in school it had to do with taxation. Yeah, sure. At some point, taxation without representation was an important part of why people revolted against England and put their lives at risk. But it wasn't because of taxation only. It was in the context of the divine right of men and women. At that point, only said men, but obviously we've learned the stupidity of that. But what does divine right mean? We're not enough time is spent on the thinking through the issues. But there is no end. The end of the American Revolution was just the beginning of an American experience that will never have an end. And what did it bring forth? So the sense in a textbook or a learning program that you have online or whatever that there's an end is ridiculous. It's the things that after the supposed end that is often more important. So let me explain in conceptual, in concrete terms, what I mean. And this in this um, learning management system that we've called Cloud Brain that has been developed by this data scientist team working under my direction for the past year and a half. Which so let's just say so instead of teaching in a linear way, it goes in ways that no one could determine at the beginning of the course. So let's say you were taking a course, all of you, on the Gettysburg Address. You know, that's President Abraham Lincoln's famous address um, to that was given to explain the reason for the Civil War and the end of slavery. And it's a very famous speech. And if you Google the Gettysburg Address, you'll get a good description of what the address said. You'll get the whole address. You'll get Lincoln's thoughts about it. You'll learn about the Civil War. You'll learn about slavery, it's the abolition of slavery, etc. Does anybody know anything important about the Gettysburg Address? I don't know why somebody just raised their hand now. In terms of its time length, this is one of the most important speeches in history. In all of history, it's one of the most important speeches, certainly in American history, but in global history. Anyone want to take a guess how long the speech was? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. The Gettysburg Address was 2 minutes. And the thousands who came to hear the President of the United States give this momentous address, they couldn't take private jets. There was no such thing. This is in 1865. And before, I forget the exact date. They had to go by horse and buck wagon and things like that for a 2 minute speech. Lincoln himself was worried that the speech was a failure because he believed it might be too short. Okay, so if you Google the Gettysburg Address, they'll tell you that it was a very brief speech, and they'll give you the exact amount of minutes. Forget exactly what it was, 138 seconds or something like that. But in our program, in our system, You learn all that about the Gettysburg Address. This is a metaphor. This is happening in everything you learn about through this system that I've been working on, which just is a reflection of the way I think you should learn. Not doesn't have to be through our system. I brought my philosophy to this and married it with data science without asking it. See, Google will tell you no more. It'll go on its own for you, the student, or when you're out of school, the user, because you want to use it for your job. You want to use it just to learn, to be a more enriched person. What's the best thing you guys learn? Things you don't expect to learn. Something that surprises you. When you say, wow, I didn't know things work that way. That's the thing that really impresses you. If you have a great teacher, they do that to you. A great mentor does that to you. Textbooks don't. Rarely do. So it'll take you, this cloud brain that I'm talking about will take you from the Gettysburg Address and say to you, 1 minute, do you know they understand the importance of that speech only being 2 minutes? It's the concept of brevity. And it will automatically then show you the contrast between brevity and verbosity. Verbosity means a great use of language, constant talking, a lot of fluff. So, Lincoln could have made the Gettysburg Address instead of 2 minutes, he could have made it for 14 hours. This brevity was one of the things that made it so strikingly powerful. So Cloud Brain will show you to contrast the impact of brevity versus verbosity. It'll show you in verbiage. It'll show you in diagrams. It'll show you in mathematics that we talked about at the beginning of our discussion. It'll show you the math of 2 minutes and 13 hours. It'll show you the meaning and the impact on your brain. And it may teach all of you, when you give a presentation on your jobs, to your families, to your bosses, to your teams, whatever, it doesn't have to be a long speech. Maybe better off if you say 3 words. My best-selling book, which sold 1 million copies almost, has 3 words. Your marketing sucks. Nobody, Random House, the publisher, did not want me to have that title. 3 words. If I think marketing is not working well, what better 3 words could I do than that? And as soon as it hit the public, sales went crazy. I'm not promoting my book. I'm just telling you that you see the power of sometimes of brevity. So CloudBrain's going to take you from the fact that this most momentous speech in American history was 2 minutes and compare that concept of brevity versus verbosity. Then, without you prompting the system, although you can ask for more information as you go along, it's going to take you to, well, where does this come from, this brevity and verbosity? And it's going to take you to the concept which some of you may have heard before, which is less is more. And what does less is more mean? It means sometimes by doing less, you're actually doing more. That's a very interesting in itself, tremendously interesting philosophical concept. How can doing less be more? Well, I'll put it in very concrete terms. Let's say you have a favorite pair of jeans and a favorite t-shirt, and you think you look great and feel great wearing it. And I come along and say, you look great, but I think you should add another pair of jeans on top of that, another shirt, a sweater, and an overcoat. What happened to how you felt and looked a minute ago before I came along and told you to make less more? You got uncomfortable and you didn't look as good. And in science, precision is when you're doing really precise calibration of things, you can't simply add more so you have more of something, it has to be exactly precise to the specific number. So more sometimes just, I'm trying to be very concrete and simple that we can ideas we can very easily understand. Again, like in food, if you have a delicious plate of your favorite food, and let's say it's grilled shrimp, and there's 5 shrimp on the plate, jumbo shrimp, and you ate them, tastes great, you feel great, you had some vegetables with it, and you're done. And I come and pour 25 more shrimp on the plate. Should you eat those 25 additional shrimp? No. You've already stated you enjoyed the experience of the 5 shrimp. You're gonna stuff yourself. Less can be more. Well, Cloudbread's gonna explain this to you again in prose, in mathematics, in anecdotes, in historical examples, and you're gonna understand the correlation between brevity and verbosity. Uh, um, Brevity versus verbosity, and less is more. You'll see the correlation between those two. Okay. Again, none of this is going to be done by Google. It's not going to take you past the short speech. It's not going to do that. CloudBrain will, without you asking for it. Then, because there's no end to a textbook, there's no end to learning. The next thing CloudBrain will go on to, metaphorically, but actually, this is just a example of what it can do and what real learning is to me. It's going to go on and say to you, well, where did less is more come from? Who developed this concept? This sounds very interesting. Was it Einstein? Einstein certainly knew it. I don't know that he talked much about it, but he might have. But who developed this concept? And you know what you're going to see? One of the great proponents of less is more, who actually brought it to life, was, of all things, an architect, a very famous architect, whose name is Mies van der Rohe. And if you look up Mies van der Rohe, which CloudBrain will show you right before your eyes, and you'll hear him talking about why he developed buildings and homes, a lot of buildings. In fact, there's a Mies van der Rohe museum, which I've been to, with his works outside of Chicago, or I think it's outside of the city limits. But I've been there, and it's fascinating. So he's got some of the greatest works in history, and he believed that less is more. So his buildings have very little ornamenture on it. Simplicity was his guiding light. How can I make this building beautifully simple, as opposed to him, garishly ornate? And he wrote a lot about less is more. And CloudBrain will show you in prose and in schematics, diagrams, mathematically, so many examples of less is more in architecture, physics, lifestyle, etc. The concept of less is more, and it'll be something you'll never would have thought about before. Plus, would you have ever known that this would emanate from a discussion of the Civil War? No way, because education doesn't go that way until now. And the goal is to make you a smarter, more enriched, more interesting, more successful person. I'll give you an example. Last night, before I went to bed, I actually read a story about the winner of the Golf Masters tournament, which, if you don't know, concluded yesterday. And to golfers, it's a very big deal. It's the Super Bowl of golf. I'm not interested in golf. I played a couple of times. I'm a horrible golfer. Nothing about golf attracts me. Nothing. I don't like to go to golf courses. I don't like golf clubs. I don't like golf balls. I don't like anything about golf. And yet, you know what I did? I read the whole story about the winner of the Masters yesterday. I wished it was longer. It was fascinating, because the story of the man who won the Masters yesterday was just fabulous. Reading that story that I didn't set out to read, which, by the way, that kind of thing Cloud Brain will do for you, teaching you things you didn't go set out to learn. Also, Cloud Brain will remember everything it taught you and see what you really like. Similarly, I read this weekend that there was a New York Mets pitcher named Doc Gooden in the 80s. He was a phenom, a phenomenal pitcher. At 19 years old, at Shea Stadium, he did things no one had ever done. All of New York could talk about nothing but Doc Gooden that year and the next year. The New York Times ran stories: is he the greatest pitcher who ever lived? People stopped what they were doing to watch him. People went to the ballpark. It was really amazing. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you may not be interested in baseball at all. I don't watch it anymore either. But Doc Gooden, it was his day at Shea Stadium this Sunday. But Doc Gooden, it's important for you to learn about Doc Gooden, even though you didn't ask to. Why? He was a phenom. Mozart was a phenom. Doc Gooden was a Mozart with a baseball. Why shouldn't you learn about him? But if you're not taking a course in baseball, no one's going to teach it to you. You all should understand Doc Gooden. How a 19-year-old kid from nowhere stood the world on its head. And no one's going to teach it to you unless you sign up for a course in baseball. That's ridiculous. And that's what Cloud Brain's going to make sure that there's less likelihood it won't learn these things you didn't say, oh, I want to learn about baseball. I don't know if any of you would want to do that, or golf or whatever. These are just examples that I'm giving you. And then Cloud Brain goes on and now a particular case. And so where did Mies van der Rohe, this architect, where did he come up with less is more? What did he mean by it fully? What did he actually mean by it? Well, van der Rohe created what he called the language of architecture. No one has ever talked to you, any of you on this call, no one has ever talked to you about the language of architecture. No one. You've never heard that concept. So it'll be gone from your learning because you never asked, tell me about the language of architecture. You never even think there's such a thing. But he wrote books about it. And Cloud Brain will introduce it to you. You may not want to be an architect. That doesn't matter. We learn from everything. If we simply learn how to be a doctor or a stockbroker or a business manager by reading books about business management, we're never going to be good. I've run businesses my whole life. By the way, Samara, the Christmas tree store was 16, not 10. I would have been a phenom if I was able to do the 10. But if I read books about business management, I'd be just a business management moron, I think. You have to learn about life and people and baseball and golf and art and science and architecture and history and all that to be a manager of anything effectively, not just to be called a business manager, because I understand some rules written down about business management by people who never managed the business. So imagine that we start from the Gettysburg Address and we go through less is more, and we go through less is more. I mean, brevity versus verbosity, and we go through less is more, and we go to Mies van der Rohe, and we go to the language of architecture. This is an example of the kind of thing, and that's learning backwards and forwards. Because what I read about, what I just told you about Doc Gooden happened in 1984 or 5. That's backwards, right? But it affects your learning going forward. But the things he did right and the things he did wrong. But the magical things he was capable of doing, he did magical things, almost transcendent powers. But he also did the very human things of using drugs and destroying his own career. And so learning forwards and backwards is critically important to me. I could go on and on, but I'd like to open them, see if any of you have any questions. And I'd like to say, this is for whoever's here. I'm working with Dean Singleton and putting together a group of students who would like to see an actual presentation of CloudBrain. And then those who like what they see can participate in internships in the next semester, about like a focus group, maybe even working on the product as it's developed sometime in September or October. But we'd have in May, we'd have a presentation on how this works, just to get your feedback. What do you think of it? Very honestly, how would you use it? What would you like to see put in it? What's missing from you? What do you love about it? What don't you like about it? It also has a built-in confidant for you that no one. It's AI driven, so no one will know what you're asking the confidant, and you might ask the confidant, I've never really been good at studying. I don't feel comfortable with this. I feel like other students are smarter than me. I'm actually afraid of building my career. I don't know where I'm going to go from here. I can't sleep at night because I'm worried about this or that. I'm afraid that I'm not as smart as other people. Whatever you want to ask the confidant, not just things like, what time is my class? Why do I prepare? No, none of that stuff. More things about your personal feelings about how you feel at any given time, so that you can learn with a freer, clearer mind. So that'll be an adjunct to what Cloudbrain does. But so I'd love to hear your thoughts on my forwards and backwards, the things that I've been saying to you. I know I've thrown a lot at you in a very short amount of time. It fascinates me, so I get exhilarated, as you can see. I think that learning is so amazing that there's almost nothing that isn't interesting. Almost nothing. I was reading yesterday afternoon how to make. I'd never baked anything in my life. Baked, cook, baked. I've never baked it. I was reading how you cook Irish sourdough bread. I'm never going to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to bake anything. But reading about how you bake Irish sourdough bread was fascinating to me. So I want you guys to be fascinated about this stuff. It's the only way to have you. Just making more money is not enough. It's being exhilarated by life, and learning and knowledge and all that is really such a great key to it. And I will yield the floor.
And please feel free to place your questions in the chat or just outright ask.
Yeah, please. On anything I said or didn't say.
So, Mark, I have a question for you. So, Cloudbrain, are there other universities or schools that are using their technology or
No,
the tool? No? So
no,
we would be the first, essentially.
yeah, no, it's
Your
something
case.
that my team and I have developed. It's brand new.
Great, great, great.
I also have a question.
Yes.
So this concept of thinking backward and forward simultaneously, it sounds fascinating to me. So can you give me some more detailed example how it work in my job or in business? Or give some example.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what you do. I won't ask you what you do unless you want to volunteer. Let's say you're a chief financial officer of a company, or you're in the financial services department,
Yes.
the CFO's office, and you want to, you want to rise in your career. So you would ask Cloudbrain, what's the most important thing that ever happened, and who was the most important chief financial officer who ever lived? And the Cloudbrain would tell you some name or three names, and then it would go off into, let's say it was the CFO of, at one point, of Ford Motor Company. I'm just making this up. And then it will explain to you why Jane Smith was so interesting as the CFO of Ford Motor. It'll tell you about her life, and then it's going to go off the rails the way you see Collaborative does, and to tell you about where she came from, and then it's going to tell you things that I can't predict now, nor can you. It's going to tell you some things that she saw in her childhood, that every time her mother brought home Coca-Cola for her, she brought home 6 bottles or 7 bottles. And she started thinking about, why does she bring home 6 or 7? She's only 5 years old at the time. She starts adding up things. And then she starts talking about Coca-Cola, and our products are stacked in shelves. And why are they stacked in shelves? And is 617 right? And should a mother brought home 30 bottles? And should the supermarket have cases instead of single bottles? You see what I'm saying? It'll go into things that you would not have thought about. That make you say, wait a minute. In our company, we do something like that. We sell sweaters to Macy's, 6 in a box. Why don't we do 6? Why don't we do 60? It's going to take you into number theory. Number theory. It wouldn't go there if you read a book on how to be a great CFO.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And I'm glad you asked that. How will help you on your job. And it also help you, it can help everybody with not just their jobs, but their dating life, their marriages, their friendships, their raising children, their any of those things, because it's going to take you places. When my children were born, the essential book you had to read was Dr. Spock's book on raising children, whatever it was, like 100 pages of stuff. But it never went off into, so what the hell's a child anyway? And what does parent really mean? And what's your role? Never did that. So Cloud Brain is designed to do that and take you where you wouldn't. Maybe take you back to your childhood first. What did you want? Do you remember yours? Anyone else? I'd love to answer any question you have.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I would love to, those of you who are interested, if you could give your names to Sophia, we can then get back to you and let you know when we're going to have sometime in May, we're going to have just a half-hour presentation on how this thing works. There's no obligation on your part. I'd love for you to see it. And if you want to comment then and you say, yes, I'd like to be part of the focus group thing and be a paid intern, then we'll contact you for the presentation in May, and then see if you want to go further with the internships. It won't be a heavy load, but some of you may be very interested and want to have a bigger role as we go forward, and we're open to all that.
I put my email in the chat. If anyone's interested, you can send me an email.
And Mark, just while we have you, I know that there is a Speedy Missions, a Project Planet competition that took place recently, and I know you've been working with them very closely, just trying to think of ways or conceptualize ways to address climate change. So can you tell our audience here a little about this Project Planet competition and what's to come?
Yeah, sure. So we invited PACE students to come up with ideas, a page or two on ways to help the planet through technology, specifically with climate change. And I think roughly 40 students submitted their ideas. We got some fabulous ideas from your peers. We have identified 2 winners. Those winners each will get $15,000 grants from Project Planet, which I am deeply involved with as well. The awards ceremony to the winners and all of those who participated, want to see what it was like, to hear the announcement about it, listen to the head of Speed Emissions, the company that sponsored it with PACE. The event will be at PACE on May, I forget what date, it's moved around a bit,
It's May 2nd.
May 2nd. So 2 of your peer students for submitting an interesting idea that went through a panel of judges from PACE and Speed Emissions and outside will each get checks for $15,000. because Pace believes, and we believe, and we're really like one family, in the power of entrepreneurship. We believe in the power of the new generation of entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've never had a job except high school jobs. Uh, and even those terrible high school jobs are wonderful because they taught me a lot, but I've never had a job as an adult. I started being an entrepreneur when I was very young. And I think entrepreneurship is such a blessing for all of you. I hope if you're not considering it now, I hope you always look favorably upon it. Put your toe in the water, think about it, support entrepreneurs. It's great. It's a fabulous thing. That's what this program is designed to do. And those who participate in CloudBrain, students who are at first interns and as focus grouping we're doing, et cetera, can definitely be open to, can't make any promises now, but can be open to having actual work at CloudBrain as we move ahead. And that would be wonderful to have some students join in the ongoing development of the and implementation of the it's state of the art artificial intelligence, state of the art.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much, Mark. Oh, we have someone else who just entered the waiting room. Let's see. Yes. Uh, Again, while we're all here, if you have any other questions or comments from Mark Stevens, he's definitely here to answer anything you'd like to, any questions you'd like to pose to him. And while you're thinking or ruminating on what you may want to ask, what I'd like to do is just mention a few key takeaways that I was able to get from what you said, Mark. So this is the first here. I know you said that learning doesn't always have to be linear, nor does it have to solely be about teachers and tests. And I think that was a very good point. And I think, you know, we all continue to learn. It doesn't matter if you're in school or out of school. It's just important to amass knowledge and to also apply it. The other point that you made is brevity is best, and you said brevity versus verbosity. I don't know if you want to expound or to add to what you said, but I thought that was a key point that you made, especially referencing the Gettysburg Address. Is there anything else you wanted to say in that regard?
No, I think that imagine any of you meet somebody on a plane. I always use this metaphor. And you're sitting next to somebody, and uh, they say to you, let's say they ask you, "What do you do? If you're working, what do you do for a living?" And it's always important to answer in less than a sentence or a sentence at the most. It has to be a compelling sentence. If you say, "I'm an accountant," "I'm a computer programmer," it no one it doesn't elicit another response from the person. So if you say, instead of "I'm an accountant," you say, "I'm a magician of math." Whoa, what do you mean by that? Well, my job is taking numbers and sorting them into the proper categories and rethinking things and so all of a sudden you have the interest of the person. And if you then go on and speak for an hour about the magic of math, no, they've already gone to board. So if the same magician of math, everybody wants to know what is that. But you want to keep it brief until you're in the right setting, of course, because you're just going to bore them if you do what most people do. Well, let me tell you where it all started. I was born in Detroit. I went to school for 9 years. I have three brothers and sisters. We weren't very rich. I kind of read a book on math. You're going to bore the hell out of them. So you want to be brief, but you want to be compelling in every way you speak to other people. Let me ask any of you who may be a little reluctant to speak, but did anything I say surprise any of you? You had to be surprised at something. No,
Well, I think what you said about the
I didn't
Gettysburg
do my job
Address.
well.
No, no, no.
I
I
didn't do
think
my
what you
job
said
well,
about the
Tamara.
Gettysburg Address was a
Nah, these
very good
people's
point.
bored. I
You
didn't do my
did.
job well. They're all bored.
They're not bored. They're not bored. Right, everyone? I
Come
think
on,
what you
what did I
also
say
said
that
about the
surprised you?
Well, I know for me, the Gettysburg Address, that was something, I said, boy, 2 minutes. And as you said, they weren't, people weren't flying in and doing all of those other things. It
Yeah.
took them a while to get there. So I know that definitely resonated with me.
Yeah, it's
Sophia,
amazing when you
any,
think about it, isn't it? It's amazing when you think about it.
mm-hmm.
This
Yeah,
monumental speech was 2 minutes.
I
yeah.
agree because when you initially asked, how long does everyone think it was? I was going to guess 18 minutes for some reason, so I was very surprised to hear it was 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even 18 minutes would be pretty short. But in those days, presidents spoke for hours. You know, don't forget they were called orators. We don't hear that word anymore.
True.
You were supposed to speak. That was before nobody ever heard of the word sound bite. There was the only kind of bite was a bite you took out of an apple. So it's so interesting, and even that you could do something with Cloud Brain about comparing BYTE and BITE and how that all progressed. When I started my last firm, my marketing firm that Tamara talked about, so it was a marketing firm, 1995. We grew to 172 people when I sold it. There were no websites, no social media, no email, no Google. Can you imagine that? There were very few development tools for online, for designers. And the Fidelity Company, which many of you probably heard, Fidelity Investments, they came to us to build their first website. Nobody had a website. This is in 1996. They asked us to create a website. I couldn't find anybody who knew how to build one. I finally got somebody's name in Boston. I went to see him by train. He said he could do it. He was alone in a tiny office. I had to have trust in him because nobody else could do it. I said, "How much do you want?" He said, $800. This is for Fidelity. This isn't for a local pizza shop. I said, "Okay, I'll give you 400 now and 400 when you're done." He did it. It was a terrible, terrible, terrible website, but we didn't know it then. This is like, the first car. And when we gave it to Fidelity, they loved it. If I showed now, it'd be a horrible embarrassment. And another very interesting point, there was no market. So what do you charge for something when there's no market? If you had the only piece of pie in the world, but everybody knew how good it was, how much could you charge for it?
True.
Well, what do you think I charged for that website that I paid $800 for, Tamara?
How much did you? I don't know, Mark. You're saying back in 1996?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I can't fathom. Yeah. How much did you pay? Let's see.
Well, take a guess.
1,200, $1,500?
75,000.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So it shows you when there's no market for something,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's no pricing.
Yeah, that's true. Oh
So
my
these are some of
gosh.
the really interesting things that you learn when you learn what you weren't asked, when you learn what you didn't ask to learn. You didn't ask me to explain the my view of the no pricing market.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very interesting because we're used to everything we want is in abundance, so we can compare one to the other. But you can't compare one to the other when there is no other.
Very
And
true.
$75,000 for like a page and a half horrible website, Fidelity was thrilled.
Yeah.
That's a business life lesson that you won't get in the linear learning model.
So true. Well, that's definitely eye-opening and staggering, but that's a good life lesson too.
And that's a
So-
real surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boy. Well,
The year Google started, 1999, our client, one of our clients, was the first online printing company. If you wanted to have something printed, you always had to go to a local printer. Um, they described they started the first online printing company because they started in 99 and bought all of the keywords from Google for free, basically, because nobody was competing for them. They went from 0 to $27 million in sales in like 9 months. That was the thing pioneering in the internet age. And I was called into Nike because Nike was having a battle between the sales and marketing people, whether to have a website or not. The salespeople were afraid of a website because they didn't want people to be able to buy Nikes online. You guys don't know any of this. But this isn't that long ago. And I told them you have to have a website. Can you imagine Nike was wondering, should we have a website? Because it's going to anger Foot Locker, who's our biggest retail customer. This is all wars, stories from the front lines that are you don't learn in most cases. But you might learn this in Powder Brain by asking, why is salt white? It may take it to Nike. It's not, you're not asking for a business lesson. It's going to take you there. This came up that way. Our discussion just now came up that way. This is Cloud Brain concept in action here with all of us. Anyway, I hope that some of you want to participate. No pressure at all. I'm sure you're all very smart people, and I enjoyed talking to you very much.
thank you very much, Mark Stevens. And let's give Mark Stevens a round of applause. Thanks so much for taking time out of your
Absolutely.
schedule to join us today.
Absolutely.
And as Mark said, if you have any ideas or if you'd like to participate in the focus group or the session that will be held here at PACE, please be sure to email Sophia, and please follow us, the Lubin School of Business. Please follow our different communication channels. You can follow us through our social handles, as well as we send out emails on a weekly basis concerning events that are happening at the Lubin School of Business. I appreciate all of you. Looks as though it's 1 o'clock, so we'll give you back 10 minutes of your time. And again, thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone who joined us today. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.